Human behavior is strange, especially the quiet thoughts we don't really say out loud. This channel is about those patterns, the ones that sit in the background of your life, shaping how you see yourself, how you move through the world, how you relate to other people. And today I want to talk about a feeling that's hard to explain, but once you notice it, it's everywhere. The feeling that you don't quite belong anywhere. Not in an obvious dramatic way. You can have friends, conversations, a job, a normal looking life, and still walk away from interactions with these quiet thoughts in the back of your mind. Something about me is different. It's not always loneliness. That's what makes it confusing. Because loneliness is easier to understand. You feel it when you're alone. This is different. You can be surrounded by people and still feel slightly out of place. Like you are there physically, but not quite integrated. Like everyone else got some kind of manual on how to exist socially, and you somehow missed that day. I remember feeling this really early, even as a kid. There were small moments where I just didn't connect the way other kids did. They would play games together, like pretending to be parents or inventing these random rules where suddenly someone is infected and now you have to chase each other around. And I remember standing there thinking, what is the point of this? Not in a judgmental way, just genuinely confused. Like I was missing the part where this suddenly makes sense and becomes fun. And I would try sometimes, but it always felt slightly forced. Like I was copying behavior I didn't fully understand, which, looking back, is not exactly the best foundation for feeling like you fit in. Nothing says natural social integration like silently questioning the logic of a children's game while everyone else is fully committed. I also wasn't very talkative, and when I did say something, people often didn't really get what I meant. Those small moments where your joke doesn't land or your comment kind of floats there and the conversation moves on without it. And after a while, you start noticing that pattern. You start speaking less, not because you have nothing to say, but because it doesn't seem to land the way you expect it to. I remember school trips, sitting on the bus, always choosing the window seat, not because I was shy in an obvious way, but because looking outside felt easier than trying to constantly engage. And I loved the hiking parts. Being in nature, walking, observing, that felt natural. There were no complicated social rules there, no pressure to say the right thing at the right time, just being. And then you grow up and you assume this will somehow fix itself, that at some point you will just click with the people more easily. But for a lot of us, it doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. Now it shows up in different ways. You can have conversations, you can function socially, you can even seem completely normal from the outside. But internally, there's still the slight distance. Like you're always adjusting yourself just a little bit, paying attention to how you come across, trying to match the energy in the room. And then you meet very extroverted people, the kind who speak easily, loudly, confidently. And suddenly it feels like there's this unspoken expectation that you should match that energy. Be just as quick, just as expressive, just as outward. And if you're not, it's easy to fall into this thought. Maybe this is why I don't fit in. So you start trying. You push yourself to be more talkative, more engaging, more on, and it works for a while. But afterwards, you're exhausted and slightly disconnected because it didn't fully feel like you. And this is where it gets a bit more complex because the issue isn't just other people, it's the relationship you start building with yourself. You begin to question your natural way of being, your quietness, your way of thinking. You need for a deeper connection instead of surface level interaction. Making friends becomes complicated. Not because you don't want connection, but because you need a certain kind of connection to feel comfortable. Something deeper, something real. And that doesn't happen instantly. It takes time, trust, a sense of safety, which is slightly inconvenient in a world that often runs on quick impressions and instant chemistry. And if you already tend to overthink, this adds another layer, because now you're not just in the interaction, you're also observing it, analyzing it, replaying it later. Basically, running a full post event analysis like it's a social performance review nobody asked for. Over time, your brain starts linking connection with effort, with adjustment, with a certain level of self monitoring. And that makes everything feel slightly heavier than it needs to be. And here's a thought that took me a while to really understand. Maybe the problem isn't that you don't belong. Maybe the problem is that you've spent so much time adjusting yourself that you've never really experienced what it feels like to belong as you are, because those are two very different things. If you're constantly adapting, filtering, softening, or reshaping parts of yourself, people aren't actually connecting with you. They are connecting with a version of you that feels acceptable. And that version might work socially, but it doesn't create the deeper feeling of belonging, which explains why you can be liked and still feel unseen. And that's a very specific kind of loneliness. Not the absence of people, but the absence of being fully recognized. The shift for me wasn't suddenly becoming more social or forcing myself to fit in. It was slowly starting to question the assumption that something about me was wrong, that my way of thinking, my pace, my need for depth needed to be fixed. Because maybe belonging doesn't come from becoming more like everyone else. Maybe it comes from allowing yourself to be a little more visible as you already are, even if that feels uncomfortable at first. That doesn't mean suddenly oversharing everything or forcing yourself into situations that drain you. It can be much smaller than that. Letting a comment land, even if it's slightly different. Not adjusting your tone every second. Spending time in environments that feel calmer, more natural. And also accepting something that isn't always easy to hear. You won't connect deeply with most people. And that's not a failure. That's just how depth works. So if you've been feeling like you don't belong anywhere, it might not be because you're too different. It might be because you haven't been in enough spaces where you're allowed to be fully yourself. And that takes time, it takes patience. And sometimes it takes unlearning the idea that you need to adjust constantly to be accepted. If this felt a little too familiar, you're probably exactly the kind of person this channel is for. I talk about these patterns honestly, sometimes uncomfortably, but always in a way that tries to make sense of them. New videos every week. If you want to stick around, you can subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.